They were able to sell the house in Jupiter-Venus. Jupiter is in the 12th house and ruled by Venus, and right away we know that Jupiter-Venus is one of the most important periods with regards to the D4. And so they sold a house in Jupiter-Venus, and the proceeds were split with her ex-husband, and that of course overall decreased her financial fortune. Now Venus is not manifested in the D4, right? And so she wasn't in a position to purchase another home during Jupiter-Venus. However, something else actually happened during this time. A new chapter really in her romantic life began and took off. She met someone new whom she really liked, and she moved in with him almost instantly, and then they even married during the same Jupiter-Venus period. So now let's see what happened afterwards. Jupiter-Sun, Jupiter-Moon. Both the Sun and Moon aren't really connected to Jupiter, so nothing important happened during that time. Jupiter-Mars. Mars rules real estate, and it's in its own sign and capable, but it is also not directly connected to Jupiter, and so nothing important really happened here with regards to 4th house matters. She continued to live with her boyfriend during this time. We are coming to the end of Jupiter Dasha, namely Jupiter Rahu. This period is notorious for women to end their marriage. Jupiter is the husband, and Rahu creates intense longings and fantasies, and that can drive a wedge between two people. And so here, the woman's good karma, represented by Jupiter, is being tested one final time before the Dasha ends. And so the question is, how much of her good karma can she carry with her into the next chapter, which is Saturn Dasha? So, in the D4, Jupiter and Rahu are in a 2-12 position, and we can see there is a potential of loss of home and financial fortune. So you probably have seen by now that particularly those positions of 6-8 and 2-12 can indicate loss and destruction of whatever is indicated in that Varga. And many times they don't need to be particularly connected. They don't need to be have even a mutual agenda. Sometimes simply because of their position towards each other, they can cause those huge breaks and transformations and losses in life. Here we got now Jupiter Rahu. And Rahu is also conjunct Venus, which is her marriage. Of course, she got married in the meantime for a second time. And Rahu is also conjunct the Moon, which of course causes more intense and turbulent emotions. And so during Jupiter Rahu, she divorced her second husband, but this time she lost all of her financial fortune. One day during Jupiter Rahu, she couldn't tolerate this man anymore and packed her belongings, moved out in an instant, and rented a place on her own. She and her husband put all their money in a bank account, and after she left, she never saw any of her money ever again. And we can also analyze the D7. We can see that Rahu is conjunct the 6th cusp of conflict and divorce, and it is afflicted by Saturn, Ketu, and Mars, and there's some help here coming from Jupiter. But this time around in Jupiter Rahu, the situation is quite different than when she separated from her first husband. Previously, they sold the house during Jupiter Venus, and here we can see Venus gets manifested by its Lord Moon and Mercury, And she was able to maintain a respectful relationship after the divorce, and they were able to split up the proceeds equally. But this was not the case with her second husband. She separated during Jupiter Rahu, and Rahu is here in the 6th house of enemies, and it is aspected by Jupiter, Mars, and Ketu. And the only help here again comes from the Dasha Lord itself, Jupiter. And when she walked away on this day, that she had enough of him, she decided to never ever talk to him again. And this is basically what happened. She never bought another house afterwards with the proceeds of her of the sale of the house from the first marriage, and she just put the money into a shared account with her second husband. But she never wanted to talk to him ever again, and so she lost all her money. And we can also see this here in the D9. Rahu is here conjunct the 12th house of loss, the 4th house of home and financial fortune. And it is also aspected by Saturn and the Sun. And so the moment that she set foot outside of her home, she lost everything. All her savings were gone. And this was for her the end of Jupiter Dasha. So next came Saturn Dasha. And we have a look at the D1. And here Saturn is all alone in the 12th house of foreign countries and solitude. And Saturn is completely free from any influence through conjunction or aspect. And if you remember, it was in her early 20s when she left her family and homeland during Rahu Saturn. She was setting out on her own in search of a new life in a foreign country. And so here she is again at the beginning of Saturn Dasha, starting over from scratch with basically nothing. But if we go to the D4, then we can see that there's a silver lining. Saturn is manifested by Mercury. So she has a potential for rebuilding her financial fortune during Saturn Dasha. Now the question is only, when is it going to happen? So for the first few years in Saturn, she worked really hard. Right? Saturn is the 5th lord of self-empowerment, talent, self-leadership, and in the 6th house of work and routine. And she started to build up a substantial amount of money during this time. And it was during Saturn Mercury that she was already able to buy a home for herself. Mercury has been her lucky planet every time, right? In all the dashas previously, it was Mercury that gave her a home. In Rahu Dasha, Rahu's lord was Mercury. In Jupiter Dasha, Jupiter was aspected by Mercury. And now in Saturn Dasha, Saturn is aspected here by Mercury. And so in every Dasha so far, during Mercury's Antardasha, she was able to buy a home. And so during Saturn Mercury, the tide began to turn once more in her favor. She bought a house. Right? Mercury is aspected by both its lord Saturn and Jupiter. And not only did she live in that house for the remainder of Saturn Dasha, but it was also the first time she felt truly content in a home. Right? Also, what happened during Saturn Mercury, her financial fortune began to rise steadily. She landed a high-paying job, and for the first time in her life, she felt no urge to leave and start all over again. She felt that she finally settled. She is now in her Mercury Dasha and enjoying retirement. There's no longer any desire to uproot her life and move somewhere else. And it's no surprise. Mercury here is aspected by both its Lord Saturn and benefic Jupiter, who bring stability and contentment. Mars here is strong in its own sign and provides the inner strength to face any doubts or home-related challenges confidently. Now financially, she is also in a secure position. Mercury here is conjunct the 8th house, and she benefits from a monthly retirement income. And so in the end, when it comes to the D4, everything seems to have fallen into place in Mercury Dasha, her home, her peace of mind, and her financial fortune.